Hey there guys, and welcome back. On this week's show, we're going to be making a honey dipper. Well, I've been wanting to make one of these for a while, and it's a quick little easy project, and I thought, why not turn it into a quick show idea? And you know, it's not really rocket science. I don't have a pattern. I don't have any kind of dimensions other than what I'm going to start with. I really don't even know what I'm going to end up with. But I thought I'd take you along for the ride and see where it goes. Some of the methods I use on the lathe or some of the chisels may not be your typical chisels. I like to use my skew chisel in kind of a little bit of an unorthodox way, but it works for me, and I don't see it as being unsafe, so it's all good. But for starters, we're going to be chucking up this 7-inch long by 1-inch by 1-inch piece of maple. So let's head over to the lathe and get this chucked up between centers. Well, here we are at the lathe, and what we're going to need is a live center for the tailstock, and we're going to need some type of piece for the headstock. For me, I like these Sorby stab centers, and I mean, you can use whatever you have that would work just fine. I've done turning videos in the past and I haven't had much luck, and so today I've got the GoPro set up at the headstock, and I've got the overhead cam filming from above here, so hopefully between the two of it I'm going to get some half decent footage. But what I've done, and I'll just show you this here, is I've marked and center punched the center of this piece of stock on both ends, and we're just going to line it up here with this Sorby center punch, or sorry, this Sorby stab center, and then again with our tailstock. And once we get her lined up there, we're going to tighten it down, and we should be ready to go. And we'll get our tailstock in, and the first thing that we want to do here is to turn this or rough this out to round. So I'm going to get my 3/4 roughing gouge, and that's where we're going to start. Just going to lower that tool rest just a touch and move it in ever so slightly, and then we'll carry on. If you hear that knocking, that means that this here isn't quite round yet. It's a quick way to check. See, you can still hear it. And there we are, our blank is round. And now we want to mark out for where the head of our honey dipper and the tail is going to be. Well, there's no right or wrong here. There's no definitive way to do it. I'm just going to eyeball it and see what I end up with. But I want to start in from the ends. This is going to be waste material after all, and I just want to start in a bit to give me something to work with. So I'll come in maybe 1/4 of an inch on both ends, just to, like I said, give me something to work with. Now at this end here, the tailstock end of the lathe, I'm thinking that this is where the head of the honey dipper is going to be. So I don't know, maybe I'll come down there about 1.5 inches, and I'm just guessing. How'd I do? I'm 1 5/8 inches, not bad for a guess. And now I kind of want like a little knob at the end here for the handle. And then, of course, why wouldn't I? But of course, we're filming and I can't stop, so I'll keep going. So these are the dimensions here that I would like to see work in this little project. So I'm just going to start off with a spindle gouge to kind of rough out these ends, and I'm going to take down some of this material in the waste areas. So here we go, we're going to start this up, and this here is, like I said, this is going to be the dipper part. So I'm just going to start working it in towards that line, just to try to start giving it some shape. So this may be a little long for that end of it, I don't know, but we'll find out once we finish turning it. Again, it's there's no definitive measurements or way to do it. You do it however you like it, and if I like the way it looks at the end, then I'm good with that. So I'm going to go ahead and continue to round this off to get the shape that I like, and then once I finish that, we're going to move on to the little knob that I spoke of at the end of it. But before we do that, of course, we'll end up cutting the grooves in our honey dipper head. So I'm going to finish this up and then we'll come back. And here we have the shape of the head of the honey dipper, and I kind of like the way it looks. So now I'm going to go ahead and mark out for the fins that will go in this, and I'm going to be using my parting tool to cut them. So I'm going to put 5 grooves in it, and I just want to make sure or try to get them as symmetrical as I can. So there will be the center one, and I'll just cut that and then I'll mark the next one. Now these here can be a bit tricky to cut, but there we go, there's one. And now we just want to mark this next one. And once we get that marked, we'll mark the one beside it on the opposite side as well, so that we get that symmetry happening, right? So we'll go ahead and cut this one now. And what you want to try to do is keep the spaces in between equal. Alright, and we got 2 more to cut, and there will be one in the head of this, right there, and one in the tail of it, right about there. And I'll go ahead and cut both of those now. There's one. And there's two. And it'll need a little bit of sanding. We got a little bit of tear out there, but that will be the head of our honey dipper. Now we're going to go ahead and work on this little knob for the tail of it. Well, at this point in time now, we're going to make this little tail knob here that I spoke of. So the first thing we want to do is take away some of this waste material, and then we're going to start forming that little knob at the end. So we'll start off with that. Now, we have a lot more to do on this, but of course the video will be 5 hours long if you see every little bit. So I'm going to go ahead and finish off this little tail piece, and then we'll come back and I'll show you what we're at that point in time. Now, I had mentioned about a little bit of an unorthodox way that I like to use my skew chisel, and I kind of like to use it as a scraper sometimes. And with that, I just get it in there and just ever so gently take very light passes. And especially with a piece at the end like this, where I kind of like it to be round, or as round as I can have it, this affords me to take very, very light cuts and get in there and get the shape that I want. You got to be careful that the toe or the heel don't catch as you're putting it into the piece. But you can get some good results using it as a scraper. I know there are some experienced turners that are cringing right now saying, good gosh, what's this guy doing? But once again, it's my show. So carrying on to shape this little ball at the end, and then we're going to work on this section. Well, I've got this little ball at the end the way I like it, and we've got quite a bit of excess material here. And once again, it's probably not the most orthodox way to do it, but the way that I like to get rid of that material is just use the 3/4 roughing gouge. So I'll go ahead and rough this down just to get rid of the majority of the material. It's just a good way to, for me anyway, to get rid of a lot of material very quickly. one thing you want to be careful of when you're using this method is that you don't catch the heel of this chisel into the pieces that you've already turned. That could cause a bad catch at this point and either destroy your piece or, you know, worse. Well, we've got it roughed down, and what I'm going to do now is use the skew chisel just to smooth this out and get a shape that I would like. Hear a little bit of chatter there. That's because our piece is getting thin, of course. Almost there. And there we go. I kind of like that little divot in there. That's good. One more little light pass. And you may notice with the skew, I'm kind of riding the bevel and then tilting it forward to start the cut, to get it to engage the wood. I'm no expert on the skew, and there are others that could show you way better than I could how to use it, but I am learning and I'm getting there. Once again, how are you ever gonna get it if you don't try and you don't practice? So now I'll just come down with another light pass. As I said, we're getting a little bit of chatter there. And again, that's because we're getting that, the thinness of the handle, and it's kind of complaining on us a little bit. And again, with my unorthodox way of using the skew, I'll just take out that little blemish I have in it. There we go. And now with that, we're going to go ahead and give this a little bit of a sanding. Well, we've got it sanded up to 220, and something that I like to do is take a bunch of the shavings and turn on the lathe, and I like to turn up the speed a little bit, and just using these shavings, I like to give the piece a little bit of a burnishing with the maple shavings, because it really kind of brings it up nice and kind of finishes off your sanding job there. Just be careful that, you know, of course you're not going to catch your fingers and cause yourself some injury, but it really does put a nice little finishing touch on it. And if you feel it's starting to get warm, and it will, just, you know, take your fingers out of there. Just release the pressure, because once it starts to get warm, of course, it's like rubbing two sticks. Eventually you're going to cause some fire. But I don't know if you can see that on the video, but it's got a really nice sheen to it, and it's really smooth. So now we're going to go ahead and part this off up at this end here. So I'll show you how we're going to do that. So we're just going to get in here with our parting tool, turning the lathe on. We want to support the piece, and just get your lathe or your parting tool in there, and eventually it's just going to break away. Now we're down to about 1/8 of an inch there now. Any second, there she goes. And what we're going to do now is we're going to get some sandpaper and clean this up. But before we do, we're going to take this over to the scroll saw and cut this end here off. Well, here we are over at the scroll saw. I've just got a number 3 blade in here, and we're just going to trim the end of this off. It's not a tough cut, so it shouldn't take much at all. And now that we have the ends, one parted off and one cut off, I'm just going to get some sandpaper and smooth this out to finish it off. And once you get it sanded, of course, you end up with something that looks like this. And now we need to put a coating on this. Well, what we're going to coat this with is the same mixture that I use on the cutting boards. And if you're not sure what that is, it's a mixture of paraffin wax and mineral oil. And I did make a video on it, so if you're interested in that coating, of course, check out the video and make yourself some. But we're just going to dip the whole thing in here, give it a really generous coating, and make sure that it really seeps in, because of course this is going to be in contact with honey, and it's going to be all sticky and gooey and all that cool stuff like that there. And you're going to need to rinse it off with warm water when it comes time to cleaning it. So you really want to get in there and give this a really good soaking of this paraffin and mineral oil mixture. So we're just going to give this a good soaking and let it sit in there and soak into the wood. And once it's done and all drained off and everything, we're going to give it a little wipe, and that will be basically all she wrote on this particular project. And there you have it, a honey dipper. Guys, this is a great project. It was a lot of fun, really quick, great way to use up some scrap. I mean, look how cute that little guy is. Look at that there. Isn't that awesome? Anyway, Christmas is coming, hate to say it, but if you got 15-20 minutes of spare time in your shop, you could whip one of these off. And all that wood that would normally get tossed off to the side, I mean 1 by 1 by 7 is nothing. So why not whip a few of these off and get them into the stockings for your loved ones for Christmas, your friends, whatever. Give it a try, guys. It's a great project, a lot of fun, it's a quick one, and what the heck, you can do it while waiting for glue on another project to dry. Guys, thanks for watching, and I'm going to see you again next week with yet another woodworking video. Just one more quick note that I want to point out. Before you get out the vacuum and clean your lathe up or sweep it off or whatever method you use, hang on to those maple shavings. Because if you go back in the show, I showed you how to make fire starters, and those maple shavings are one of the key ingredients. So if that's the sort of thing that's up your alley for your camping trips or the cottage or your wood stove or what have you, then hang on to those. You know what? Why not? Why not? If you're going to use up the scrap, use it all. Thanks again, guys. See you next week.